Hello everyone, my name is Oliver, and I will be your Futura GMAT coach. Why don't we get to know each other a little bit? I was originally born in Nebraska, but grew up on the beaches of sunny Southern California, though I do still bleed Cornhusker red. For the non-US based students, the Cornhuskers are the American football team located in Nebraska. So I grew up in Southern California, but I've actually lived in Buenos Aires, Argentina since 2006. Now, why would I go to Argentina and stay there so long? I do have to admit that there are some beautiful women there, two in particular, my daughters. Other things that I like to do, I do some acting and production of independent films. I do enjoy binging a good TV series now and then, and I love good food and drink, and have even been known to dabble around in the kitchen a bit myself. Now, enough about that, right? Why am I the best person to teach this course? Well, there are some different things that you should know about me. Number one, I've always been good at this type of test, particularly the math section. So when I took the SAT exam in high school, which is the exam required in the US to get into universities, I remember taking the exam with a bunch of other my friends, and after we finished the math section, I went out to the break, and I started bragging, hey, guess what, everyone? Guess who just got a perfect score on the math section? I was so confident that I got a perfect score. But my good friend William walks up to me and says, oh, but wait a minute. Do you remember this specific geometry question? What did you answer on it? And I did remember it. I remembered my answer. And he said, you fell into the trap. Actually, the correct answer is this. And I thought about it for a second. And I said, you know what? You're right. I got that question wrong. Okay, so I said then, I guess I didn't get a perfect 800. I got a 790 on math. A couple months later, when I got my test scores, that's exactly the score that I got, 790, missing one question. Now, years later, when I wanted to apply to get a master's degree in philosophy, I had to take the GRE exam. Now, GRE also has a verbal and quant section, and when I took that exam, I got a perfect score on the quant. So I had the near perfect score on the SAT, near perfect score on the GRE quant. So I'm pretty good at this type of test. Now, speaking of my master's degree in philosophy, you might think, wait a minute, I would rather have like an engineer or a linguist who teach me this course. Well, actually, you would be greatly, greatly mistaken if you thought that they would make the best teachers. Now, philosophy, while all of my friends told me it would be very useless when I was in university, actually, because it is based on logic, and the GMAT is actually a logical reasoning test, it's not a math and grammar test, having a solid foundation, 6, 7 years of university classes in philosophy between my bachelor's and master's degrees, makes me pretty qualified to understand the logical reasoning behind the exam. Now, what jobs have I had in my life? I've had lots and lots of jobs. Some of the more interesting ones and related to GMAT, even though they may be indirectly related. First off, I was a professional poker player for many years. And while poker seems completely unrelated to a standardized test, keep in mind that probabilities are one of the quant topics, and knowing probabilities is something that I mastered when I was playing poker. Also, being able to perform under a high-pressure environment is something that you also have to master while you're playing poker professionally. Not entirely unlike how you will need to perform on GMAT test day. And so I can definitely give you some insights on how to handle the pressure. Now, teaching experience, I've got a lot of teaching experience in a lot of different environments. I've taught ESL students from 6-year-old to 66-year-old. I've helped high school math students. I've taught the TOEFL exam and lots of other different teaching and tutoring experiences. Now, when it comes to the GMAT in particular, I have exclusively dedicated to teaching GMAT since 2018. During that time, I've taught hundreds of students and helped them reach their goals of getting high GMAT scores well into the 700s in many cases, and getting them admission to top MBA programs worldwide. Now, how much do I know the GMAT? Well, I personally have taken the GMAT twice. The first time I took it, I had been teaching quant for a couple of years, decided to study verbal on my own, and I did pretty well. I got a 710. Now you may say, pretty well, 710 is a great score. It's like top 10%. Well, you have to understand that everybody's score and whether or not they consider it a good score relates to their specific objective, right? If you want to get into a mid-level MBA program, maybe 600 is a good score for you. But if you want to get into Harvard, 600 will get you dinged no matter how good your background is. So you need something more like a 700. But my goal was not just to get into the top 10%, not just to prove that I could get into Harvard, but to prove that I am one of the world's elite GMAT coaches, that I know this exam so well that I can get a score that is better than almost anybody that takes the exam. And so, set with that goal in mind, I took my 50 out of 51 in quant and my 37 out of 51 in verbal, and I said, you know what? I need to improve this verbal score. So not only did I start studying some more, but that's when I started teaching verbal as well. And so after about a year and a half of taking verbal students and really understanding the reasoning behind the exam so much better than I did when I was studying on my own, I decided it was time to sit for the exam again. This time, when I took the exam, my goal was to get a 760. Why? Because a 760 is the minimum score that is in the 99th percentile, meaning that that score is better than 99% of the scores received by test takers. And that's what I wanted, to prove I'm in the top 1%. And so I took the exam, and as I was about to click on the next button to get my score, I took a deep breath and I said, okay, the only thing that I don't want to happen is to get a 750. If I get a 750, I will be so disappointed that I was so close to my goal, but I'm not satisfied with the 750. And so I know that I will have to come back and take this test again next year or in a year or whenever. And so took a deep breath. I said, okay, just don't give me a 750. And so with my goal being 760, clicked on next, and I saw 770, right? And I was just ecstatic. Of course, I'm at a test center. Other people are taking the test. I can't scream and jump up and down and celebrate, but I was just like, oh, fist pump. Yes, I did it, right? Calmly take off my headset, right? Take out my earplugs, go get my official test score, and I knew that was it, right? I am not obsessed with getting a perfect 800 like some GMAT coaches are, because I realize, and one of the things that I'll teach you in this course is the value of understanding when enough is enough, right? When your goal has been achieved, or when you've reached a score that is high enough to reach your objectives, right? And why is this important? It's because the closer you get to an 800, the harder it is to improve, right? So going from, let's say, a 650 to a 710, which is a 60-point jump, right? That's really hard, right? I mean, that's really hard to make that 60-point jump, and will probably take you months to do that, right? But going from 710 to 770, right? That's something that didn't just take months. It took years, and it took me years of dedicating a lot of my resources to learning that, right? I wasn't working full-time doing something unrelated to the GMAT. I was teaching GMAT. And so because of that, right, it was a lot of thinking hours that were required, studying hours that were required to go from there. Now, if you want to go those last 30 points from 770 to 800, that is probably harder than going from 650 to 770 combined, right? So it would take years and years. And honestly, I don't need to prove anything to anyone. I know I'm a great GMAT coach, and I know I'm the right one for you. So without further ado, let's get started. I'll see you in the lectures.